to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's a Friday morning. We're live, large and in charge. And it's so good to be in your company. Now listen, Hollywood was abuzz this week, Jamie Lee, with the news that famous actor James Dean, who passed away in 1955, is set to return to the big screen. Yes, this is thanks to both CGI and a talented voice actor who will voice his lines. Now, given that technology can bring our favorite actors or artists back to life, might our favorite stars ever retire from cinema? That's the big question. So here to help us unpack how this technology is restoring cinema and cinema greats as well, and all the implications therein, our resident tech expert, Bryan Smith. And we've been having lengthy discussions about this off camera, but it's great to have you here discussing this.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah.
So, Bryan, listen, let's start right at the beginning, because I'm really confused. How exactly are they going to bring James Dean back to life, and how is technology going to just, make this possible?
That's the big question. So when it comes to sort of managing the digital legacy of an act and bringing that into the 21st century and beyond, there are a number of different ways to do this. So the approach that the movie studio has taken with bringing James Dean back for this movie, which is going to be called Finding Jack, and it's set in the Vietnam War, is quite interesting. So instead of using motion capture or hiring another actor perhaps to portray him with some kind of likeness or resemblance, they're actually going to restore him into the movie exclusively via CGI. So it's more about capturing his likeness than the actual performance of the original actor. So instead of using archive footage or materials, they're actually going to hire a voice artist to sort of emulate his voice and bring his personality and charm, so to speak, back to the big screen.
Yeah. So has this been done before? Have other actors been, I want to do this big air quotes, brought back to life in other roles before? And what kind of technology is being used to do this?
They have. So bringing an actor back by CGI is one approach, and that's going to be really interesting to watch what happens with James Dean. But this actually isn't the biggest controversy or biggest debacle we've had or debate we've had around this technology thus far.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, Peter Cushing, the famous actor, was actually brought back from the original Star Wars movie into a more recent Star Wars movie called Rogue One, a Star Wars
That's who we're looking at on screen right now.
Precisely. And this was actually done in an entirely different way. So an actor, Guy Henry, was portrayed to give a voice and physical portrayal of the character Tarkin on screen. And then essentially his face was mapped out, and what they managed to do through a combination of lighting techniques as well as some machine learning, they were actually able to superimpose Peter Cushing's features on top of his face through CGI. So what you actually had was an actor portraying an actor giving a portrayal of a character.
Wow.
And it's really interesting to note how the differences are in that how we can restore particular pieces of footage back to the big screen. Another really good example, also from Star Wars, is Carrie Fisher tragically passed away before she was able to conclude the latest Star Wars movie coming out this year. And though her family didn't give consent for her likeness to be reused or edited, what they were able to do is restore her into the film through unused footage. So it's a big part of the debate around maintaining actors' legacies and exactly how they'll be used in feature films or franchises that they've been associated with after their death.
No, it totally makes sense if you say it like that. But how are the digital legacies of the actors handled then?
So that's the biggest question. There's no real regulation to sort of define how someone's likeness or perhaps their portrayals might be used into the future. It's one thing to use them in a documentary, for example, about their life, but it's another to reconstrue them into a particular portrayal in a movie. And one of the things that's been noted so far, and that could happen, is that regulation could allow actors' estates and their families, long after their passing, to essentially use their likeness or their previous portrayals to generate sources of income into the future. So we might see a future in which celebrities sort of beyond the mortal foil, living in the here and now as we call it, might well continue to act far longer than they might have in the past.
Yeah, and this kind of technological use also has far-reaching consequences, at least from my perspective, tentacles in the world of deep faking, as we've learned about as well, because we're now starting, accepting this blurs the lines between reality and, I guess, fiction or digital world. Once we start accepting that, we start accepting, the infusion of that into our lives, you know what I mean?
Totally, and if you consider how readily accessible deepfake technology is today, what are we going to consider in 10 years' time when we're able to essentially take on the likeness of an actor or perhaps a celebrity through this technology, through an app or service on our smartphones? It's going to be something huge to consider, and watching what's happening in the movie industry now might just be the tail start of it.
Spill over into that. Bryan, thanks very much. Appreciated. How about you consider that topic of conversation and let us know what you think about this exciting or perhaps very threatening technology that is impacting not just the cinematic world, but in later years as well, could be impacting the real world as we know it. Real world.